You seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
Welcome, Be Critical. This is Wes. I've been contemplating doing a video for a few days now, and I just couldn't get exactly what I wanted to say or how I needed to express it or kind of explain what where my head was. Because I wanted to talk about how, for a long time, really art in general, but obviously this is a comic book channel, so we'll talk about the comic books, has typically been like gateway into the past, where sure you're reading a superhero story, you're reading Batman, but when you read Batman in the 80s, you're seeing how that has developed or adapted to the times, or drop of the things that you're seeing really give you a glimpse, not only kind of the sense of the people at the time, like kind of how they dress, what are the turn of phrase. I always love that when you read like the some of the golden age and silver age comics, some of the turn of phrase in those comics I think are absolutely hilarious. But at the time, a lot of those things would have been things people actually saw in life. I think it's that's why it's always so much fun. I always really big into history, so that's why I really do enjoy doing those actives and really getting these glimpses into the past. Of course, it's not only just the surface level stuff. How were people dressed? What were their hairstyles like? What were they saying? Just as far as what was some of the vernacular that was popular. But you'd also kind of get the climate. What were people worried about? What were some of the things that were on people's minds? Obviously, when comic books kind of really starting off, you've got like World War II going on. This would have been like the Great Depression. We would have had Vietnam kind of in there. You would have had, the Cold War. Without the Cold War, you don't get a Watchmen likely. And so you get kind of these cool glimpses into the past. And the same thing with movies. That's why I like old movies as well. A lot of times you really get to see kind of this, like just a snapshot of the way kind of things were. And then, of course, it's interpreted through the eyes and ears of the creators, the writer and the artist. In some cases, the writer is the artist. And I think that's one of the reasons I really do like back issues. I think the storycraft was better, but you also really get a sense of what people were kind of going through. Or when I say people, I don't individually what they were going through, although I'm sure that's in there. But I don't think is so much up front as what is society kind of going through. Now, I'm sure that there are times when the creators maybe were going through something personal and it ends up on the page, but it doesn't feel so overt. And in today's comic books, and certainly you do get a little bit of that, what's the temperature of culture right now. But I think what we get more than anything is what is the temperature of the creator. And it feels like it's been a drastic change from the past. And I was like, how do I kind of talk about this? But it actually makes quite a bit of sense, because that in and of itself is a glimpse in a snapshot into today's culture and the mindset of a lot of the creators, not only the creators, but the people out in society today. I don't know if you've noticed this, but people have become very, very narcissistic. It's become the culture of me. So in the past, where you would have a great creator like a Denny O'Neil, who would take a character like Green Arrow, and he wants to tell a story about drugs, which would have been very controversial at the time, but it was important to him, and he would have found a way to incorporate that story around the characters, obviously, of Green Arrow, Speedy. Who we also have in that cover? Is it Batman? I think it's Batman. And he's able to use the characters to highlight something that's part of the culture now. But what we see nowadays, and I've talked about this on the channel, but we'll kind of highlight it more here, is we're seeing the writers are actually molding and transforming the characters around themselves. They are taking the universes in which they are creating in, and they are wrapping it around themselves to really the narrative moving forward, or the loudest voice in the comic book, is no longer Batman. It's no longer Superman. It's not Spider-Man that you're really reading about. You're literally reading about the writer. And I think that's one of the real issues that's going on right now as far as the story craft, but it also perfectly highlights what we're seeing out in the greater culture. And I do think when people come back to this era, there are obviously exceptions. There are better writers out there that kind of know what they're doing, but when they kind of look at the rank and file, just the Johnny come lately comic writers that are never going to be big names, you're going to see that a lot of them were completely unable to remove themselves from the story and highlight the character that they're doing. And we're seeing this all over culture. You're seeing this kind of all over the world as we're no longer able to really communicate with each other. There's no longer an acceptance of other people with differing beliefs or whatnot, or differing opinions on things. When someone disagrees with you today, you're supposed to take it personally. Not only do they have a disagreement with you, that means they hate you. That means they hate what you represent. That means they are, this bad name, of that bad name. How can we take just a moment in time, a snippet of a reaction, and infer the worst possible thing about a person, when they have some criticism for you, or they have a disagreement with your opinions. And we're seeing that obviously right here in the pages and within the culture of comic books, movies, television, all that stuff. But this is a comic book channel, so that's where we're kind of keeping it. And that's why a lot of these creators, if you criticize them, you are not criticizing their work. You're criticizing their life. You're criticizing their lifestyle. You are criticizing their personal beliefs. You are criticizing, perhaps their faith or lack thereof. You are criticizing the things that they hold most dear, because they know themselves that they have not only, they've kind of stripped away a lot of whatever that character they're writing represents, or whatever that universe that they're writing in represents, and they've replaced it with themselves. So when you think about the reaction to a lot of criticism or feedback nowadays, or maybe people just saying wasn't great, well, that is an affront. How could you say? You're not saying that story wasn't great in the minds of that creator. You're saying that they're not great, that perhaps they're not perfect. And we have this this entire generation. It's just kind of starts right underneath my generation. Obviously, I'm at the tail end of the Gen Xers, where we were just kind of left home to fend for ourselves. And you have like this, not all of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, but you have a generation that's predominantly made up of people that want to be left alone. They want to be individuals. They don't want to be made to conform. They want you to do what you want to do, but just don't make me want to do it. And if you ask my opinion, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not really here to, sugarcoat things and protect your feelings, because that's not how I was raised. I wasn't raised to the point, or this generation really wasn't. When someone asks your opinion, that means they want your opinion. That doesn't mean that they want a version of the opinion that's as nice as possible. So that's why there's a lot of disagreements, and there's a culture clash between the generations. But this younger generation has been raised on so many lies that you've got this kind of overriding sense. And obviously it's not all of them, not even be the majority, but there's definitely a good deal of narcissism in there. But I guess when you think about these younger generations have been told, because we were left to fend of ourselves, and then the next generation of parents saw what was going on there, and they said, we don't want that to happen, so they overcorrected. They became helicopter parents, right? We can't let Johnny fall on his ass and learn that he needs to get himself back up. And you've been telling these people their entire lives that they're going to change the world, that they're going to save the world individually, which is almost, you think about the people out there that have been very important to culture, very important to making changes in the world. They couldn't do it alone. when I think of some of the more recent heroes that I've had. Martin Luther King had a dream, and absolutely he's someone to look up to. But Martin Luther King didn't do it alone. There were so many other people that were along or with him or pushing forward or supporting Martin Luther King along the way. Without that support, or without those other voices that were moving along with him, those things couldn't have been done, right? Now, obviously, we remember Martin Luther King Jr. very highly, but he wasn't able to do these things alone. You think about someone like a Gandhi, who's had a tremendous impact on culture and, as far as the relations, with Indian stuff. Without support or without people, backing him and his ideas and getting the word out, nobody knows who he is. So you really can't do these things alone. And obviously there are a billion other examples that we could kind of go through. But if you've been raised on this lie that you yourself are going to change the world, and the next thing you know, you're in a spot where you're writing Moon Girl and Devil Dynasty. Well, let's not use that example. That one is a little bit less fun. You're writing Riri Williams, a more diverse, younger minority character that's replacing the rich white billionaire disgusting thing that is Tony Stark. And you've put your heart and your soul, so much so that you've kind of removed any uniqueness from Riri Williams, and you put yourself into there, and you realize that you haven't changed the world, or you're not going to be able to change the world. That could be a very difficult place to be in. And when someone says your version of Riri Williams sucks, Brian Michael Bendis' was bad, you made it somehow worse, it just feels like hate. It feels hateful. So that's where we've got to this weird snapshot, and I don't know how long we're going to sit here. Is it going to get worse? It feels like it's going to need to get worse before it gets better. This almost feels like it needs to go to the edge of disaster, like one finger or maybe a few toes over the edge, as we're leading over. Perhaps a calamity is right imminent to happen before we could step back and realize, well, wow, we might have went a little bit too far down this road of overwhelming ourselves with narcissism and believing that our own personal beliefs and the one thing that we find most dear is the one thing that everybody else in the entire world must find most dear. And if they don't, that means they are a bad person. They are a hateful person. You see people pouring these things into art and entertainment. And it's I think it's going to be just a veritable, a field to be to be kind of harvested, as far as some of the mental conditions that we kind of created for ourselves in this weird time that we're living in. I often do feel like I'm a man living in the wrong time. I think my sensibilities and my view of myself and the world that I'm in, probably maybe fits more in line with, maybe 1950s America, maybe 1920s America, maybe the Old West. I would feel more comfortable and more in place, because I feel so out of place in this. I don't understand where people are coming from. The fact that that you feel yourself, that you're so important that you have to overwhelm everything around you, including your own job. These characters and these universes are going to live on decades, potentially, hundreds of years past any of these writers that are working on them today. And in order to be remembered, and in order to have a legacy that people, to put your stamp on the comic book industry, it's not going to be by writing the most interesting story about yourself using someone else's characters that they love. It's going to be by embracing the character and telling the best version of that character with the best story that makes sense within the time, to where it really stands out and feels culturally relevant. And I think that's why a lot of the stuff today, while it might be emblematic of the culture, it's not going to in the end be something relevant, because you've removed the essence of the characters and the universes from the story, at the expense of yourself. And in that place, this is going to be, I was saying, I was like, there's not going to be a snapshot of this part in time. This is the perfect snapshot of what's happening right here now. The narcissism that's taking over, to where, you have to tell everybody exactly what you think on everything. And if they don't agree with you, they're a bad person. You have to lecture them and let them know over and over and over and over again. And, who are we kidding? In 20 years, people aren't going to be reading a vast majority of this stuff. But if they ever like dip their toe in there, there's going to be dollar bins still. They actually go in there and read them. They're going to be like, man, a lot of these creators they had like some emotional baggage that they were bringing to the character, and not in a positive way. It's weird. It's, from my perspective, it's unprofessional. like when you go to work, even if you're having a bad day, you leave bad day at home. You go into work, you do the job the best that you can. You play nice with everybody around you. You do the best you can. You go back home and you deal with your own issues, and you don't really bring them to work. But I don't, now thinking about, kind of the last few years, in the military, that is not a prevailing thought amongst as a professional behavior, or something like a mentality that you need to bring into your professional life if you want to be successful. No, everybody would bring all their drama into work. It's the craziest thing. Like, Facebook was the worst thing to ever happen to me as a leader, because all these dickheads, they know each other at work. They friend each other on Facebook, and then they make each other mad. And then they have all these stupid spats, and they bring them into the office, and you'd be sitting there in between like these four airmen. You're like, gonna look both ways, and you're like, what the fuck is going on today? It's like, I have to take one of them aside. It's like, so what happened? Oh, so you guys, someone went to dinner and didn't invite the other person, so therefore they must hate them. Like, are you 12? But they do bring a lot of people bring a 12-year-old's selfish mentality, to their profession, to their life. And it's just, I don't know, it's the strangest thing, but it's absolutely embodied. There is a time capsule that people are going to be able to go back to. It's comic books, and they're going to see all these weird, unhealthy mentalities, these unhealthy worldviews, these unhealthy attitudes to your fellow human being that have been, internalized and just spewed out as much as people. A lot of these people like to say, "Oh, well, you're hate, right?" Like, there ain't nobody in this world that hates other people more than you, because as soon as someone disagrees with you, you think the most hateful thing humanly possible about them, as far as their intentions and where that is coming from. And the hypocrisy and the lack of principles is just, it feels overwhelming sometimes when you deal with people. But there you go. We are getting a time capsule. We are getting a snapshot of culture today. It's just not the culture around people. It is the culture that people themselves have overtaken it. The cult of me is overtaken and overrides everything else in today's society, as far as I'm concerned, from what I see, what I've observed. What do you guys think? Am I on anything here, or am I just rambling like a crazy man? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.